Hey guys, and welcome to the Alabama Saltwater Fishing Report, the first podcast bringing the local fishing report, whether it's good, bad, or ugly. Changed that up a little bit, didn't we, Joe?
It hadn't been under 30 minutes in quite a while.
Hey man, that's all right. We've had so much good feedback, just saying that we don't really care how long it is, as long as it's good stuff. So we shall oblige, sir.
If we ever get too long-winded, y'all just let us know in the comments on social media or on iTunes. We can always cut it back down. But so far, everything we've heard, everybody's telling us to make it longer. So we're going to do that today, no doubt.
I know you've been hearing that your whole life, Joe.
Oh,
got him!
All right, let's go talk to Devin Potts, man. We got some good offshore reports coming in. It's exciting, man. Spring has sprung, so let's talk to Devin. Devin, it's been a while, man. How's your winter going?
Man, it's been good. Been in the boat yard and been doing some yearly maintenance, bottom job, and so on and so forth. But
I imagine with a boat that big, it's going to be it's going to be a lot to maintenance and prep, I would think.
Always.
Oh, yeah.
Always.
On, man?
Fun stuff.
Here you had a pretty good trip.
Man, we got lucky enough to go with a friend of mine last week and got out there to go see what the lump bite was all about. And that fishing was a little bit slow, so we kind of turned onto the wahoo trolling and had some success with that. That was pretty cool. So we got to catch a couple of them and missed probably 3 or 4, hooked and missed. But man, it was fun. It was fun to get back out there. It was a pretty day. So
what are you guys trolling? You trolling those? I guess you call them the stretches, and then I call them tremblers and regular lead heads.
Yeah, tremblers. Yeah, I started out. I was pulling like an Islander on one side, like a purple and black Islander with a skirt, and like a wahoo bomb type looking thing with the lead and skirt and Islander on top, and then pulled the pink stretch 30 on the other side, and the pink kept getting bit over the Islander, so we switched the Islander out for a trembler to put another swim bait down there. And yeah, man, that pink stretch 30 seemed to be doing it. You know, it's hard to get a good hookup ratio with that thing because the way they bite, it's kind of like crankbait fishing for bass. You kind of, except for you're doing it at 8 knots and 32 ounces of trolling lead ahead of that. So
right, and a 60-pound
he whacks it in the side of his face, it rips out or whatever. That's right. It's kind of, but getting the bites, you got a chance, you know. So
Devin, you mentioned y'all were 8-knotting it. Did y'all try some different speeds and end up there?
We did. Yeah, because we're trying to create less pressure on the rod. So you're trolling, like I put a trolling lead and then probably a good 15-foot stretch of, I don't know, probably I'm guessing number 15 or number 17, single strand, like 200 pound or whatever. Same kind of like piano wire, what we used to do, what we used to make our pin rigs with for the dredge mullets and stuff. Pretty heavy gauge stuff. And so, but yeah, man, it was weird because it would create so much. Of course, the faster you pull, the more pressure you're putting on everything, and you're trying to find the right balance. Pulling a swimming bait is a little different with the speed. You got to kind of play with it and see what they're liking as far as bite versus your hookup ratio, because obviously the more pressure you have, you don't want to come back with a set of lips, but you feel like every time you get bit, like it's either going to rip out or something. So
break his neck, and he's going to float up.
Yeah, right.
Those things are a pain to pull, but I know they work.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever you're trolling for wahoo and stuff like that, obviously there's a lot of pressure. But 8 knots, probably be a little less pressure. You just run those on full strike?
Yeah, we just run them up like to where the line's not clicking off the reel, and if that strike, then that's where it's at. And normally a 50, it's good. It's a good drag setting, anywhere from 15 to 18 pounds at strike. Yeah, I mean, it just kind of depends on the lure and how it's pulling, and we try to minimize the drag. Once you get bit, you know, you can kind of help yourself out by not having so much drag, because you're going 7-8 knots one way, fish is going the other. Wahoo's probably the fastest apex predator out there, so a lot of times they eat and they're hooked just with minimal drag. So
definitely, you just want to try and reduce that impact as much as possible.
Yeah, reduce the impact and reducing your landing ratio will come. Hookup ratio and land and getting them to the boat will go up a little bit, you know. But
certainly.
But yeah, it's fun. It's fun to get out there and do some of that stuff. You know, we don't get to do a whole lot of that in the summer, and they're not very concentrated in summer like that. So,
Devin, I've seen some pictures of some really nice yellowfin coming off the lumps, but it sounds like it's kind of like bumper boats over there right now. Is it crowded over there? And I mean, it does seem like there's good fish being caught, but is everybody catching them, or is it kind of
spotty? If you've been to Robinson Island on July 4th weekend, you have a pretty good, comparison to what it's like out there on a calm day. But
scenery's just not.
Yeah, you could probably put your fenders out and get in line, but you got to get in there with them, man. I last year or a couple of years ago, I went over there and I was like, man, I don't want to get in the middle of all these guys. I'll hook up. I'm gonna have to, whatever. And I wasn't getting bit, and sure enough, I made everybody's drifting, so everybody kind of takes turns and drifts through just over the top of the lump, or they'll drift on the edge, or just make a few drifts, like just making a few passes through there. And when it's on, it's on. I mean, they eat right out of your hand, but you got to get up in there. Seems like you got to be up there. Yeah, got to get up there and rub elbows with them a little bit.
Well, good, man. That's a pretty good report. That's promising.
Yeah. It's been hit and miss.
Glad to hear you're out on the water and no longer in the boat yard.
Man. When
are you guys splashing down again?
Oh Lordy, we will.
Yeah, when's the first tournament? When's the first big one you fish?
Johnny Dorland's tournament is 17th or 18th of May. Dang. That's Orange Beach Billfish Classic. So we are patiently waiting for that day, and won't be long.
Going to be here before you know it, no doubt.
January 31st gets here. We go to the yard, and end of February we try to be out. And spring break gets here, and it's all over with. Summer begins. Right. So.
All right, man. As we always like to get that tip from you, and this week's offshore tip brought to you by Killer Dock. As anglers, we put a lot of time, money, and passion into fishing. We know that all. Yeah. We know that all too well. But most of us don't have a fish cleaning station that we're proud of. Many of us are suffering from dock dysfunction. A rotten table, rusty metal, this is just no good. But the dock enhancement that we've been waiting for is finally here. Killer Dock uses marine-grade aluminum to make fabulous fish cleaning tables and stunning canopies that will keep us out of the sun. Killer Dock combines durability, function, and design to uniquely upgrade your entire dock experience. Visit killerdock.com or check out Killer Dock on Facebook for more.
Devin, have you cleaned a fish on one of these Killer Docks?
I was just about to say, we got to get it.
I have not, but it sounds pretty, sounds like it's something I need to look into.
We're going to let you partake sooner rather than later. Butch, they've been selling a bunch of these things.
They have.
Yeah. I mean,
I'll send you some pictures, Devin. I'm getting mine installed this week.
It's one of those things where you didn't realize you had a problem until you realized you had a problem.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, right.
And it is, though. I mean, we've all done it. I'd hate to know how many thousands of pounds of fish we've all cleaned, but at this point. And then when you go and you do it, and you're not dirty at the end of it, and I don't know, they're going to be just fine. They're making a heck of a product. I really like it. What you got?
Yeah,
for us for an offshore tip, man.
Yeah, well, this week, just because the wahoo fishing seems to be something maybe everybody would be doing, trout or tuna fishing, but the wahoo fishing, we've been, I guess a good tip would be to take like these stretch 30s or some of these, the tremblers come with a good heavy, I think it's a 9/0 or 8/0 on a barrel swivel type thing. But the stretch 30s and stuff, they don't come with a very heavy O-ring and hook combo. I mean, it looks heavy, but a wahoo would you may not catch but one or two, and it may straighten you out or may mess you up. So we've been changing the O-ring and treble hook out to the owner, like the 4X or the 3X owner. I can't remember the size, but we just try to match whatever hook, comes with your lure.
For sure.
Try to match it to that hook, just a bigger, beefier version of that. And then the split ring, definitely something over 200 pounds. So I want to say the split rings we had on were 150 this weekend or 175, and we ended up breaking one on a fish. So
and that'll ruin a trip.
A lot of power, man. Yeah.
I hate
go all that far, spend all that money to get out there and make it happen, and come short right there. That kind of sucks. So.
Yeah, that's a great tip, man. And I would think that goes for pretty much any prefabricated, rigged, anything.
No doubt.
Just make
diamond jigs.
That's right.
Everything.
Make sure your O-rings and your hooks are beefy enough to handle what you're catching. That's a great tip. I like that a lot.
Something else, Devin, I want to ask you about, just came to mind. We used to see so many wahoo lost right at the boat. And it seemed like, to me, the biggest problem I saw is you got that big old heavy trolling lead. You got that big old lure. And a lot of times, right when you're fixing to gaff that fish, somebody let slack get in that line.
That's right. Or he shakes his head.
And he'd shake his head and he'd come unbuttoned. Do you have any pointers for folks if they're
man,
when they get them to the boat? What do y'all do?
Well, you guys just said it. I mean, there's a lot of times that they come up to the surface and they'll do that little head shake there at the last minute, and that'll throw it. But you're better off to not get any slack in the line and keep, depending on if you can see the hook and see the fish right there on the wire, then then you can wrap up on them and come on up and end the game pretty quick. But I mean, the best advice I think I could probably give somebody is try to see that hook, see where it's at. And if you don't know, especially fishing one of those stretch 30s or something like that, where he's maybe hooking the side of the face, just be real.
Take your time.
Don't fingertip it, but I wouldn't really horse him a whole lot and just kind of get him up there, let him lay up and put the steel to him,
Yeah, tight, but not too tight. Yep, you're right.
All right, Devin. Well, man, we appreciate you being on today. We're going to keep checking back with
buddy.
you as we get through the spring and the summer. We're excited to have things heating back up. Good luck out there, and y'all be safe as y'all get into the tournament season. We'll talk to you again soon.
All right, buddy.
Butch, it's good to have you back this week, man. You had a rough go of it last week.
Man, I think I'm just now getting right. I wasn't even right yesterday or the day before. I guess it was the flu.
It seems very coincidental that you got sick the day after Fat Tuesday.
Guess what I did Fat Tuesday? I worked. That's right. I did absolutely nothing because I hate Mardi Gras for one. I won't say that because that's –
you just offended a lot.
That's probably a cuss word around here. Yeah,
you did offend a lot of people now. But I did see. Week before last, you and Patrick had a real good trip. Caught some nice speckled trout, tagged some nice redfish.
We did,
and caught some flounder. And speaking of flounder, the unicorns do exist. It does seem like we've seen quite a few reports. So one of those reports is coming from Scott Kennedy, giving us the onshore report this week. Scott is the owner-operator of Whistlin Waters Kayak and Charters. And tell us what's been going on this week, Scott.
Yeah, like you guys said, we have been catching flounder. These are fishing areas we generally don't catch a whole lot. Of all the years I've fished there, I've picked up two. And but in the past 2 to 3 weeks, the flounder bite there is really kicking off. I don't know if it's numbers this year are better, but we've been having some great flounder days.
Those are just incidental catches. You're out there fishing for. What are you targeting?
Yeah, they first kind of started as incidental catches. We were just kind of looking for redfish. Some of these slower bite days where we're having to work. Some different kind of paddle tails and gulps and stuff, and it's like we accidentally caught one and then accidentally catch another one. And so we kind of start switching our focus up and and then, we have had some days where we've strictly targeted them and actually caught them, which is just crazy to us.
Tell us about the pattern. I mean, you're fishing from a kayak, obviously, so you're kind of limited on the areas you can get to quickly, I would say. But what kind of pattern are you seeing? What's the water quality like, and where are you starting out? What are you doing to stay on fish?
Here this past weekend we had a neap tide, so that really threw a wrench in the mix. But prior to that, kind of this week we've had an incoming tide throughout the day, and we've been getting out there about middle of the tide. The grass, it seems like the water is just starting to touch these grass lines, and as we're noticing the water's just starting to touch the grass, then we'll kind of start working these grass edges closer to the mouth of creeks and different tidal rivers and that kind of stuff, and kind of trying to focus on the thinnest grass we can find that is, still right on the edge of the water. Something that just looks like bait would be able to get up into. And a lot of what we've been finding is on the edge of these, real kind of sparse grass areas. We've been finding them just kind of hanging out on the edges of that, like I said, focusing, towards the mouth of the rivers and stuff, and just working real slow. Been having to work it, almost painfully slow, but just kind of picking it up maybe an inch or two off the bottom and just being real finesse with it. But it's been paying off for us.
That's what she said. Hey, Scott, we've talked before about this winter not being that crazy. Do you think you're seeing a lot more grass over there that just didn't die off this winter?
Yeah, I tell you, we do. We have been seeing a lot of submerged grass that, especially, I couldn't tell you what the technical name for it. We've always just kind of called it witch's hair. It's like a real thin grass kind of moss, and there was a lot of it this year. Generally, it kind of eases off as the winter goes through, but we've had a lot of it this year.
You mentioned finding the fish. When you say that, do you mean that you're just, you're blind casting and then you're hooking a fish and that's how you're finding them? Or y'all actually, you spotting bait, or you spotting the fish themselves tailing? What do you mean by that?
When they make it easy, you're able to see them just crushing bait on the surface. And it's you can definitely tell that it's that, when they're not making it that quite easy, what we've been looking for is kind of areas along these current banks where you're getting a good current flow, and you kind of you find a pocket that doesn't have quite as much flow, or a little point that they can tuck behind. And we've been paying a lot of attention to the bait. The minnows will tell you a lot about what's going on in the water, so we've kind of been watching them on the edges of it, and you'll notice, you'll be going down the creeks or rivers or whatever, and some of the bait will be nice and calm, and then all of a sudden you'll just find a pocket of it, and that bait is just they're darting everywhere. They're acting real erratic, and usually that's indicating that there's some kind of fish around, and that has been a big key for us lately. It's just kind of trying to read the bait.
Now, Scott, you mentioned paddle tails and gulps. Are you trying any topwater right now?
Oh yeah, that is of course my favorite thing to throw. I have a topwater title on every time I go out, and we're starting to see a lot more topwater bites. We're starting to get multiple fish a day on topwater, which is good. Through the winter we would get some here and there, but it really wasn't the most productive way. But now we're really starting to see these fish, or they're really starting to focus on the upper water columns. If you have one hit it, a lot of times, here lately they've been following it up and coming back for it. So it's not like you're getting the short strikes and that's the end of it. So it's promising, showing that the summertime feeding patterns coming, waters are heating up. So it's definitely worth keeping a topwater title on.
That's awesome. I know Joe and I like to use that topwater as well. There's nothing like a good topwater bite.
No, you can't beat it. There's nothing that gets my heart racing like a topwater bite.
There's a few things that get my heart racing like a topwater bite.
Yahtzee!
It is up there. All right, so let's get right into that onshore tip, Scott. So this week's onshore tips brought to you by the Coastal Conservation Association of Alabama. Guys, are you looking for an enjoyable night out and want to see all of that money spent on conservation efforts within Alabama? Check out the CCA's 20th annual Lower Alabama Chapter Beach Party. This event will be held April 26, 2019 at the Wharf in Orange Beach, Alabama. It starts at 6 p.m. It's going to be a live auction, silent auction, raffle, dinner by Villaggio. I don't know what that is, but it sounds delicious. And live music by Wes Loper. Pre-sale tickets are discounted to $110 per couple and $75 for a single. Each includes a one-year CCA membership, dinner, and drinks. Tickets will be available starting March 15th at CCAAlabama.org.
It's a pretty cheap night out.
Man, this
really
nowadays, if you're getting dinner and drinks for around $100 for two people, and all that money's going back.
Let me know where.
Yeah. All right, Scott, what do you think, man? What blow our minds?
I guess my tip this week is fish real bright colors, especially for the flounder. The brighter chartreuse, neon color you can find, the better. With all this rain and everything and the high winds, it's got that water real dirty. So having something bright and flashy has definitely been key for us.
I like that, man. You start talking flounder, you got my ear.
Yeah, tasty treats.
What about scented versus unscented? Does it seem to matter on those flounder?
Yeah, I definitely prefer to have scent. You'll get some bites without the scented, but it just seems like they like to bite it and hang on to it a little bit longer when you get that kind of scent and flavor to it.
All right, Scott, good report this week, man. Stay safe out there. And if folks want to get in touch with you and maybe book a kayaking trip, how do they do it?
Yeah, if you guys are interested in a trip, you can check out our website at whistlinwaters.com, or you can shoot me an email at kayaking.kennedy@gmail.com.
All right, buddy. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, Scott. All right, Joe. It's always good to hear from Scott Kennedy over at Whistlin Waters Kayaking. He's always doing something cool over there. Who's getting the Fairhope rattle this week for the Hey Cap question, bud?
Well, I don't know if we're going to send him a Fairhope rattle. I'm not sure if he deserves it, but we're going to do something a little bit special this week on the Hey Cap question. I've actually got a question from my dad, believe it or not. This question has some backstory to it. Now, if you listened to the podcast last summer, you heard Richard Rutland talking about catching cobia, especially using his side vision to find fish that he otherwise would have never seen. Same thing with triple tail. Well, folks that know me, folks that know my family know that my dad is a cobia and triple tail nut. I mean, that's just all he thinks about.
Fiend. And he's a fiend.
It's a little bit embarrassing, but we won't get into that. But the thing is, there was one day Dad had listened to the podcast, and he said he was going to go out there after those cobia. And, I was, of course, working. So I called him up. I knew he'd been out there, and I called him up and I said, Dad, how'd y'all do? And he's like, well, we caught one undersize. And he said, but I saw Richard out there. And I was like, oh, okay, that's good. Well, I'll call him, let him, sorry y'all didn't do any good, but I'll call him, let him know. So call Richard, and I said, Richard, did you see my dad out there fishing today? He's like, oh yeah, I saw him. He pulled up. That's good. And he said, well, how'd y'all do? He said, well, we caught 14. And so I was like, really? You did? Okay. And so I called Dad back, and I was like, Dad, Richard caught 14 cobia. You caught one. And he's like, what's your point?
That is a fisherman's worst nightmare.
He got so upset with me, and I told him it was like Richard is spotting those fish. He's able to find fish that you can't see with that side vision technology that he's got. And I don't know. I guess it ate him up all winter long thinking about that.
He's been stewing over it. He's been thinking about it for 6 months. And
so he contacted me the other day, said, I want to ask a Hey Cap question. So here it is. This is from Emery Baya. I don't know if he'll get a Fairhope rattle or not, but he says, Hey Cap, I mainly do inshore and nearshore fishing on a 23-foot hybrid bay boat. I particularly like looking for ling and triple tail. I now have a 2011 5-inch screen GPS fish finder combo, and I'm thinking about upgrading. Space on my console may allow up to a 9-inch screen. Captain Richard has discussed on several podcasts how he uses his electronics to help find fish. The 3D side vision capability sounds interesting. I believe that on one of the podcasts, Captain Rutland said that he uses a Ray Marine Axiom Pro. Looking at Ray Marine's website, I see that they have an Axiom and an Axiom Pro, and both seem to have 3D capability. I'm curious about the extra features and capabilities of the Axiom Pro compared to the Axiom, and I'm also interested in transducer recommendations, pros and cons of transom mounts versus through holes, etc. So what we're doing special today is we've got Kurt Nowaski with us from Ray Marine. Kurt, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for being a part of it. I know you heard my long-winded story there. Sounds like Dad's got kind of a unique. We've got a unique fishery here, and he's got a very specific set of constraints that he's looking for. But what do you think about his question? How does the Axiom Pro compare to the Axiom, and is there anything else that Ray Marine offers that he might want to consider?
Yeah, well, first off, thanks for having me on. That's a perfect question, and you said that you have a unique fishery in the opportunities that he has, but that question really, whether it's in the Midwest where I'm at and you're chasing bass, or largemouth or smallmouth, or crappie or bluegill or cobia or triple tail, it doesn't matter what the species is. The root of that question is basically what's the difference between someone like Richard that does this full time and really understands his equipment versus someone who's trying to learn it. It's a lot like if there's something wrong with my wife's van or something, I can Google how to change an air filter and probably get that done. But I'm not an expert mechanic, and I'm not going to tear the whole thing apart and fix anything big. So that's kind of the root of where we're at.
Kurt, you can say it. My dad's a novice. I mean, he's a novice.
It's sort of. So here's the deal. I mean, even if you look at like me, right? I mean, I'm married. I've got 3 kids. Somehow it seems like my kids are in about 47 different sports at the same time. How do you get from 3 to 47 events? I don't know, but we're always running, right? So when my wife gives me a pass on Saturday morning to go fish for three hours, I'm not going to go jack around with my electronics. I'm going to go fish for 3 hours. And if I get a bite and catch a fish, I had a good day. If not, I went fishing. But at the end of the day, I never learned to use my equipment, right? So
right.
That's the difference. So if that first free pass Saturday I learn how to use my electronics, then I'm more efficient. I have more fun every other free pass that I get. Not that I get that many, but every one of them becomes a little bit easier. So that's kind of the root of I guess where I would draw the line between a novice and someone that does this full time. Is it's really understanding the equipment. And I'm not talking about, being able to dive in and do every little thing it is. It's finding the right features, the right adjustments to do what you need it to do. And then from there, learning how to read your electronics and trust what you see. And then once you get to that point, then your success automatically goes up because you're fishing in better areas, you're in more productive areas, and you're actually fishing harder because you feel like you're in fishy areas and you're doing things to make it happen for you.
That's a big part of it. Butch and I talk about that all the time. Is confidence, whether it's hunting or fishing. But if you're confident in your strategy and confident in your area, you catch more fish. Period. Mm-hmm. If I'm not confident, it turns into a beer drinking trip for me usually. So.
Absolutely. So kind of back to the product question. So when you looked on our website, so the Axiom and the Axiom Pro were multifunction displays, or MFDs that we call them, that were released a couple of years ago. And what was unique about them is if you look at the way technology has changed over the past few years, and then I'll go into each one of the different sonar technologies, but we had, as an industry, we had sonar, and then we got down vision, and then we got side vision, and then we got 3D. Well, everyone started to kind of grow, and you started off with one unit and one transducer, and then you added a second transducer and a module to process it, and then you added a third transducer and another module to process that, and then you have to put in a network switch. So it just got kind of, a little more complicated than it needed to be as far as wiring and networking and power and all of those things. So when the Axiom and the Axiom Pro came out, they were the first units on the market to, number one, feature a quad-core processor. So it's a gaming-like processor, quad-core processor, a lot of horsepower, because we're asking these things to do, a lot of different features and functions. The old, just give me a GPS fish finder day, those days are kind of gone. I mean, these things are more like, small mini computers. So they came out with the quad-core processor. They had the Lighthouse 3 operating system, which behaved more like a phone or a tablet as far as navigation through, kind of drop down and touch and hold type menus, as opposed to going, 3, 4, 5, 6 layers deep into old fish finders to find some of those areas. And again, that's one of those things that I think your dad and a lot of other people struggle with, is you get so far down into the weeds, so to speak, that you're afraid to hit a button, because if you hit the wrong one, then you have to do a factory reset or a master reset. And so there were just a lot of things just due to the evolution of the technology that made it just a little more difficult for people to understand. So that was kind of the premise of the Axiom Pro. Get it in like a tablet-based system so that all the menus are shallow, make it easier for someone to use. You've got a quad-core processor in there, so it's got all the horsepower it needs to process everything. The difference in those two particular units is the Axiom is a touchscreen only unit, and the Axiom Pro has a built-in keypad on the side, and it also has an internal 1 kW port. So if you're fishing offshore and you need one of those bigger transducers, a 1,000-watt transducer, you can plug it directly into the Axiom. So you've still got all the processing in the unit, and you don't need a separate module. So again, that's what was available at the time, and that's what Richard runs. These units can be networked together. They can support thermal cameras. They can support radar, and you can just build out a really nice, big elaborate system off of them if you want. Kind of what your dad really needs. And again, a new product that we just introduced specifically for the nearshore, inshore freshwater market is the new the Ray Marine Element. The Element comes in 7, 9, and 12-inch screen sizes. It's a push-button unit only, so it's no touch screen. I kind of have questions and debates with people and even with myself from day to day on, do I like a touch screen? Do I not like a touch screen? Do I like a hybrid screen? And kind of what it comes down to when you're looking at a fishing unit, whether it's, cool weather with gloves or rain or slime or grime or whatever, at the end of the day, you just can't go wrong with buttons. Touch screens are nice, don't get me wrong, but buttons just work and they make it simple. So the Element unit comes out. It's a button-controlled unit, features the same quad-core processing technology like the Axiom. It has the Lighthouse 3 Sport operating system. So again, if you think of it kind of as the little brother of the Axiom family, it really only delves into the fishing aspect of what Axiom does. You can't hook thermal radar to Element. You can't thermal cameras, to Element. You can't hook radar up to it. You can't network multiple units together. But if you're, again, that nearshore guy, like the boat that your dad described, you want one 9-inch unit, this unit's going to do it all for you.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely don't think Dad needs to worry. You don't need to worry about hooking up thermals. I mean, Dad doesn't wake up these days till 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning, I'd say, and he's definitely asleep early.
He's retired. You leave my buddy alone. You leave my buddy alone. He's retired. He can do what he wants.
Well, what about transducers? He also mentioned that in there. Are there any cons to? I mean, he's currently running a transom mount transducer, and he's toying around with the idea of going with a through hole. But like anybody, he's got reservations about making a hole in his boat. Is there any negatives to transom mount as opposed to a through hole?
Not so much negatives. So there's a couple of things, and again, your dad's spot on every question he had, everything he asked, right? When you buy a boat or have a boat, it's not second nature, or it's not real intuitive just to go drill a 2-inch hole in the bottom of a boat. That's typically not what we want to do with boats. So there's been a little bit of apprehension with through holes. Now I will say that when you get into the offshore, the nearshore boats, that's a lot better. The biggest difference in the two really is if you think about sonar versus radar. Sonar works in water, radar works in air. And typically when you run a through-hole transducer, it's going to be back kind of near the pad area of the boat. It's going to stay in clean water, so you're going to be able to hold bottom and track bottom a little bit better. Now, if you find the sweet spot on the transom for a transom mount transducer and you get clean water to it, then absolutely you can run a transom mount transducer up, 30, 40, 50 miles an hour and still hold bottom. The issue is if you have a little bit of turbulence coming off the transom of the boat, coming off your bracket, if you don't have it mounted just right, if you run an aluminum boat in some areas and you have a rivet, if you get those air bubbles in there, just like when you get air introduced in your prop and it starts to slip, again, sonar works in water. If it's trying to shoot through air bubbles, you're going to lose bottom, and that's typically what causes a transducer to blow out, is what a lot of people say. So you'll lose bottom, and you won't be able to read till you slow back down, and that water gets clean around it.
So, Kurt, sounds like to me, for the kind of fishing he likes to do, which is like we talked about, near shore, he's not typically running around looking for bottom structure. He's going to be at idle or just just above idle. It seems like that Element is going to be the most cost effective, and just a transom mount transducer is going to be the way he wants to go. And if he had any trouble with that, he's always got the ability to upgrade. But it seems like you're not really losing anything as far as imaging. You're not really losing anything as far as power going down to the Element.
No, you're not. And like you said, at that idle speed, we don't see as much turbulence, back in the transom area. Now, what's nice is any of these units, any of the families, whether you go Axiom Pro, Axiom, or Element, we do offer a through haul option on all of those. So even without changing units, then yes, he could upgrade transducers at a later time. But there's absolutely no problem running it on the transom like that. The other nice thing is the Element, again, with it being designed for the near shore. We don't have to hit the greater depths that we do like for the offshore guys. So the actual profile, the number of elements and crystals in the transducer, the Element transducer is about 25% smaller than the Axiom transducer. So you do have a smaller profile back there on the transom. So you're not catching as much water for a rooster tail or inducing, quite as much turbulence.
Well, Kurt, you guys are doing some exciting things at Ray Marine. I've been blown away by what Richard showed me with the technology y'all are. So y'all keep it up, man. We appreciate you being on the show and answering some questions for us today.
All right, my pleasure.
All right, Joe, that was a really cool segment from Mr. Kurt. I always like to talk to people that know what the heck they're talking about. That dude knows his stuff for sure.
Yeah. There's a lot going on with electronics these days.
It's overwhelming.
Come a long way, and it is. There's so many different options. That was a cool synopsis on kind of breaking it down to what a guy might need.
Definitely. All right, man, let's wrap this thing up. We're going to head down to the Marshal of the Mississippi Sound. That's his title this week. Captain Bobby Abrascato. How are you doing, Captain Bobby?
All right, guys, man, I appreciate that. Yeah, that's kind of where I've been lately. That's for sure on my guide trips. We had some, probably since we talked last, had some really good trout trips, kind of early spring trout trips. Some fish showed up, some transitional fish had showed up on some of the flats down there, which was a pleasure because as we've talked about it, it's not been a stellar winter for trout. And it was so much fun to go down there and kind of, that's what I really like doing is I love that pattern fishing and looking for areas that signs of fish and that sort of thing. And, having it to myself and that sort of thing. So it's fun. I really like the action when you find some of those transitional trout like that. And that's been a lot of fun. We went back down after that, everything had moved out there. And then of course, we had 2 or 3 nights of low 30 degree weather, the water dried up. So we had to kind of move back into the marsh and go red fishing. And that was very productive too. We ran a couple, multi-boat trips and, every boat was well into the double digits, and usually we're coming in with combined totals of, triple digit redfish, in some little bitty creeks and stuff that you can cast across with a little live cast. So, it's been a lot of fun, man. I love this time of year. This is a fun time of year, having to go out and look and find fish, but it was just refreshing to go out there and find the numbers of some of the trout we found, again, after the not so great winter of trout fishing we had.
Yes, sir, for sure. And I just wanted to take a second to congratulate you and Captain Richard Rutland. You guys sealed up the bog this weekend, right?
Yeah, we did, man. We won the championship again and won the tournament too, which was our goal was to win the championship, but we lucked into some fish, fortunately early because the mid-morning on bite for us was non-existent, but we luckily caught some nice fish real early, fairly early in the morning and got a pretty decent limit. And then we just had to beat one other team points wise to finish it up. And so we brought home another giant trophy. I'm just so tickled that my wife gets mad at me, but when I come home with a big trophy, she goes, "What are you going to do with that trophy?" I'm going, "How are we going to find some place for it?" I can tell you that. Right. So my office right now looks kind of like something out of a Sanford and Son scene right now with the stuff in there, but that's the way I like it, guys. I can tell you that.
Where did those fish come from, Bob? I mean, were y'all doing some on top water, or is it still slick lures?
We started a little bit with top water, but you could tell pretty quickly it was going to be a slick deal, and every single fish came on slick. And pretty much with the exception, we got because they send us off fairly early, we were fishing for a little while in the dark, and that was the only reason we threw top water, and we never got a bite. Every fish came on slick lures.
Any special color? I know I fished with Patrick.
We fished what Joey renamed the B-Cat, which is my go-to color, which is the pearl and chartreuse tail, and that's all we threw all day. We stuck with that color. It's a good off-color water lure, and we were fishing really off-colored water, and usually one of us will start to play around with a different color when it slows down, but we got it done, all on that color. So that's the one that did. Of course, we started out in the morning, and I think I had 6 rods. I had a popping cork rod, I had a top water rod, and then I had 4 of the pearl and chartreuse tied on. So Richard said, "I guess I know what you're going to be throwing today."
That's right.
So yeah, I love that color. It really works well.
You like that B-Cat, huh? That doesn't happen to be a Captain Bobcat Abrascato named lure, does it?
That's it, and he couldn't name it Bobcat because there's already a lure called a Bobcat, so he calls it the B-Cat. But
that's close
anyway.
enough.
So I love that. So anyway, but
Bob, you were talking about those fish transitioning down in the Sound, and last week we had that cold front come through. This week we're going to have another one come through going into the weekend. Will that move fish? I mean, will they transition, say, out of the Sound and back up into the rivers? How will that affect them when you get one of these later cold fronts that may drop the water temp a few degrees? Will it just make the fishing uncomfortable for us, or is it really going to affect the way they bite or where they are?
It won't move them because it's not going to stay cold enough for a long enough period of time to really drop the water temperature dramatically. The biggest thing it does is it's not so much the temperature drop, is a lot of the fish, that we were catching pre that last series of cold weather we had, is they were in such shallow water that the water levels dropped 2 feet. And, you're down there now in water that's, a foot deep. You can't even get to it. And so the fish don't move like back in the rivers, but what they do, I think, is they just pull off some deep water and get a little bit more spread out because there's not a lot of bottom feature. And a lot of times, too, when it drops off like that, they quit feeding. And a lot of times it makes it a little bit harder to find them because there's not slicking or you're not seeing a lot of mullet activity or that sort of thing. So, no, it doesn't like untransition them. They just move. And then 2 or 3 days, a day or 3 days of warmer weather, and they just pull right back up where they were, and that's exactly what they did this week.
Scott Kennedy, we had him on previously, and he was talking about they've been catching a lot of flounder where he's been kayak fishing. And I know you think I'm fixing to make a joke about you and flounder, but I'm not.
I did.
But he was talking.
I was waiting for it too.
He was talking about scented. He really felt like the scented lures were making a difference for him with the flounder right now. Are you seeing the same thing in the sound with regards to is live bait a necessity right now, or scented artificial baits a necessity right now?
For redfish it is, but for trout I don't worry about the scent. If you can get live bait, it helps. I think sometimes maybe it helps fire the school off, but I can tell you some of the hot school bites we were on, we were doing just as well, if not better, certainly better from a quality standpoint than live bait, but we were keeping up pretty well. If you look at the number of fish you catch, you probably do catch more in artificial, because when you're missing those fish with the live bait, obviously you have to reel in and rebait and go back out. Where you miss them with a voodoo or whatever you're using, you just leave it there, and usually you get another bite. So your time in the water, you may get a few more bites on the live, but you're actually going to put just as many fish in there with the artificial. So to answer your question, I don't worry at all about scent with when I'm trout fishing. I don't worry about it at all. Now, when I go red fishing, like I said, when we had to go back into the creeks, I either put some scent on a voodoo, or my big thing, I just rather go straight to a gulp. If I know I'm just targeting redfish, I'll go to a gulp shrimp, and because basically the gulp shrimp is scent. It's just made out of the scent,
Well, Bobby, what do you do when you're flounder fishing?
Yeah, there it goes. He couldn't stand it. Hey, I am proud to say, and I will send you a picture. We actually did catch a flounder. I was thinking about when you were talking about Scott. I said, dang, the flounder fishing must be on fire, because we actually caught one the other day.
Jumping in the boat.
And my brother caught a couple. My brother even caught a couple. So there's definitely some flounder around if we're catching.
Yeah, I fished with Patrick last week, and I caught a nice flounder on a dang regular size slick lure, cool beans color. It wasn't even that big of a flounder.
Oh,
either.
wow.
He must have been hungry.
Yeah, I'll tell you something. I've caught flounder on that slick too. You know what I'm saying? I think that those, especially a bigger size flounder, those things. I don't think there's a whole lot that they can't get in their mouth.
Yep, no doubt about that. All right, Captain Bobby, we're going to try and get that inshore tip from you. And this week's inshore tip is brought to us by your local Geico insurance office. Everybody knows Geico has great auto rates. But did you know they also have great rates on boats, ATVs, motorcycles, and personal watercrafts? Give Ron Davis a call at 251-445-0053. Did you also know that Geico does even more than insure your valuable items? They also offer underwater services like towing, battery jumps, gas delivery, and you can save by bundling these services with your insurance. Call Ron Davis, Geico Insurance Agent, or visit him online at geico.com/mobile-AL. What you got a tip for us this week, Captain Bobby?
Well, speaking of insurance, it's never a bad insurance policy to have a top water tied on. How'd you like the way I did that?
I like it.
Nice
segue.
segue.
Like that, huh?
You're turning into a real pro, Bobby.
How about that, man? No, man, I'll tell you, it's getting to be top water time. It actually already is top water time. And when I was fishing yesterday, I was thinking about a couple things that I've been doing on top waters to help me. I get asked a lot of time, what's your favorite color? I don't really have a particularly favorite color. As long as my top water's got a silver side to it, I don't worry too much about the back. But one of the things that happens, and it happened yesterday, is I was catching them. We had a late trip yesterday. We were catching them up towards dark. And it got really calm, and there was no reason for the fish to quit biting. We were throwing some pretty big 120 millimeter long Berkeley topwater baits. I changed out and went down to a smaller size lure, a little 3-inch lure, and the bite started right back. So the moral to that whole story is when you carry a couple different sizes, if you're going to go topwater fishing, have 2 different size topwaters tied on, don't worry too much about changing color and keeping the same size and pitch lure on there. If you notice a bite changes, particularly if it's been choppy or if you move to some calmer water, go down in size on your topwater. And a lot of times you'll find, particularly in quiet water, that the smaller lures are going to help. And the other thing I did do too is I use mono because it floats with all my topwater lures. And but I still, even though I've got mono on there, I put about an 18-inch, about 30-pound fluorocarbon leader from the line to the lure. And what that does is that stiffness of that line keeps the lure from jumping over that light mono line and getting all tangled up. Everybody's had that problem, especially when you get excited and overwork a lure. You'll jump that lure over the line and it makes a mess. But if you put your big stiff piece of fluorocarbon on there, about 18 inches, and that'll prevent that line mess up that you get a lot of times with topwaters.
That's really smart. I mean, if anybody's thrown topwaters much, they've come back to the boat where that leader has hooked on that first hook of that topwater. So you're saying,
or worse yet, it goes through the split ring, and then you got to cut it off and retie it. Yeah, and so that we've all had that happen. And think about when you're topwater fishing, you're fishing it at low light, which means you're trying to retie your lure in the dark when your buddy's getting blown up on every cast. You know, right. So you really want to prevent that tangle from happening.
Bobby, do you have a knot you like for that the mono to fluorocarbon connection, that splice?
I use a knot. There's a number of different knots you can tie. I use one that's very simple. It's called a surgeon's knot, and you can look it up. It's called most of the time you'll see it advertised as a double surgeon's knot, which works fine. I tie it 3 times, which makes it, I guess, a triple. It's a very, very easy knot to use if you're just tying a piece of tag, like a piece of loose leader. You can't tie that knot if you have a spool or something on there. But if you're just tying, like in this application, you're just cutting off a piece of leader and tying it to the line. And I use a surgeon's knot. It's not a real big knot, real easy to tie, and it's very reliable. So that's the one that I like to use.
You're such an overachiever, Bobby. They say 2 wraps, you do 3. You know,
that's right.
Yeah, well, sometimes if I'm in a hurry, I just go with 2. But typically, I go 3.
All right, Bobby. Well, man, a good report this week. Thanks for all the info and congrats on the big win.
Definitely.
I know you're going to be getting into the thick of your season. Folks want to book a trip with you. I know they need to go ahead and do it. They can check you out at 18 Fishing Adventures on the web. And where can they call you if they want to get a trip booked for this spring or this summer?
That's the easiest way is just go to the website, 18 Fishing, and there's a contact us tab that's real easy to navigate. And it's also got our phone number, so you can just call us or just book through the little form you fill out there. And that's the easiest way to do it. Kim's at the ready, either, on the email or on the phone. So she'll get you booked, or she refers it to me sometimes too, but that's the easiest way to do it.
Sounds good, Bobby.
Yeah,
all right,
we appreciate it.
All right, guys.
Talk to you again soon.
Thanks,
okay, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Yep, keep whacking them.
All right, Butch. We succeeded in making it longer than 30 minutes.
I would think we exceeded that probably significantly.
What'd you learn this week?
I learned there's a lot of cool tournaments coming up. For one thing, we got the ACFA tournament this weekend. It's the March Madness tournament. You can get more information on acfafish.com. And then the really cool tournament is that we've got your 6th tournament. That's on March 23rd. You guys check them out. I think the more information is going to be on the Saltwater Fanatics page for that. We've got your 6. I will be there enjoying free crawfish and live music. I'm going to bring my dancing boots. What did you learn, Joe?
Man, I think I learned to fish like bright colors.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a spring thing.
Could be a spring thing. Devin was talking about the pink tremblers. They caught them on those. And Scott Kennedy was talking about the bright chartreuse stuff for the flounder.
And Bobby was talking about that pearl and chartreuse slick lure.
Yeah. Could be
bright.
A spring pattern.
Maybe you need to break those moccasins back out you were talking about a few shows ago, and you get like some pink moccasins. Maybe that would change your luck.
For the fish or for dancing?
Either way.
Sure, I'm in.
I can't see you going wrong either way.
Agreed.
All right, folks. That's going to wrap it up this week. As always, we appreciate the reviews on iTunes. We'd like to see more of them. If y'all could, head over there, subscribe, rate, and review, and give us a review. Let us know how we're doing. We'd love to hear from you. We appreciate all the reviews we've gotten over there. If you'd like for us to email you the podcast each week, just head over to greatdaysoutdoors.com/ASFR. We'll send you the new show each week.
Also getting those Hey Cap questions. AlabamaBestFishingReport.com too.
Yeah, that was a good Hey Cap question this week. I did like the dad contributing, but y'all got to step it up a little bit. Y'all send us some stuff. We need to hear from you. AlabamaBestFishingReport.com. That's going to wrap it up. We'll see y'all next week.
Keep whacking them.
This week's Alabama Saltwater Fishing Report has been brought to you by A-Team Fishing Adventures. Check them out online at www.ateamfishing.com or contact them at 251-661-7696. And also Trotter Marine. Call Ray or Burns at 251-679-5959 or check them out at trottermarinellc.com.
And also Whistlin Waters Kayaking Charters. You can check us out at whistlinwaters.com or shoot us a phone call at 251-408-2604.
And also Great Days Outdoors, the South's finest hunting and fishing magazine. Pick up your copy wherever magazines are sold or check them out at greatdaysoutdoors.com.
This week's Saltwater Fishing Report is brought to you by Angelo Depaola, the Coastal Connection with eXp Realty, your boating and beach property specialist. Check me out on Facebook at Angelo Depaola Realtor, the Coastal Connection, or call me direct at 850-287-3440.
Also brought to you by the Alabama Coastal Fishermen's Association. Check them out at acfafish.com.